I think managing your coding projects is extremely important. Now, don't get me wrong, process for the sake of process can really overcomplicate things. And if you have a software project where you're going to be the only developer, then meticulous planning can feel like overkill. However, I've always felt like planning, even if I would be the only developer, was still very beneficial. And I always think it's a great idea to plan your projects well, just in case you won't be the only developer one day. And when you are working on a team, clear planning just isn't helpful. It's absolutely essential for collaboration and making sure that everyone is on the same page. And that's why whenever I embark on a new coding project, I like to do my due diligence and thoroughly plan it out. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I plan and manage my coding projects, whether it's just for myself or a part of a team, using Monday.com. All right, so I have this app that I'm building on the side called State of Health. It's a fully functioning app that I've deployed to the App Store that's packed with a solid amount of features related to workout tracking and macro tracking. You can check out the website or mobile app if you want to dive into it for yourself. But again, the high level is that it's a fitness-based workout and macro tracking app. Now, this app took me around 150 hours of total dev time, which was about 2 months on and off of development, and I've been slowly adding to it ever since I released it. And in this video, I want to walk you through exactly how I planned this project as if I was creating it over again using a project management tool called Monday. So Monday is an extremely popular project management tool that I've personally used on past freelance projects, and I know a lot of other software development teams use. Now, full transparency, Monday is sponsoring this video, but rather than giving you a pitch on why you should use Monday, the plan is to show you how to effectively manage your coding projects right with their tool here. All right, so let's take it from the beginning. When I first started this project, I wrote down in a Notion doc everything that I wanted this app to include. I have this one-page document here with the entire feature set outline, with each feature sort of split up into multiple sub-features that I ended up handing off to a UI designer to make the designs of the app for me. And here are the designs that the UI designer created for me. So these designs sort of gave me a good visual of what I wanted my app to look like and helped me kind of conceptualize how these features would operate, right? So after getting the UI designs, I actually created a brand new project board that I used to sort of manage the state and workflow of my project. So here's the Monday board that I have set up. And this is where we'll sort of break down the State of Health project as if I was creating it from the get-go. So the two major pieces of functionality for this app are the workout tracking and then the daily macro tracking, as you see here, right? And everything in this app is sort of built around these two features, macro tracking and workout tracking. Now, for the sake of simplicity, I'm only going to be zoning in on the workout tracking portion of this app. And this is the final coded design for the workout tracking screen of the mobile application. As you see, it has this graph up here for tracking. It has this button right here where I can add exercises to my daily workout. It has another button where I can create custom templates like this. It has this button where I can view my previous workouts. It has functionality such as deleting and organizing exercises. As I'm doing my workout, I can type in the number of pounds that I'm repping and the number of reps. Essentially, this screen has a lot of different features, right? And if, as a developer, I was given this task to create this entire screen from scratch, that would be pretty overwhelming, which is why it totally makes sense to break down this screen into smaller, more manageable chunks or features, right? Which is exactly what I was trying to do when I originally created this Notion document, where I broke down the major features on the weightlifting tracking screen right here. However, a Notion document isn't a great long-term solution for managing a project, which is exactly why having a tool like Monday to help you manage your project is crucial. We can take this screen right here and then break it down into smaller, more manageable features and add these directly to our project board right in the backlog section here. So let me collapse this a little bit. We could have a feature where, we could do something like create the weekly workout graph, the graph that you see up here. We could have a feature that encapsulates the functionality of adding an exercise to your daily workout like this. So we would create a task for add daily exercise to log. We could have another task for creating custom exercises. So there's this custom exercise button where, if I have an exercise that isn't on this pre-populated list right here, I could create that custom. So I don't know, something like muscle up, right? So we could have a task for create custom exercises. We could have a feature for creating workout templates. So create workout templates, or maybe just workout template functionality. We could have a feature to view previous workouts. So view previous workouts, so on and so forth. You should get the gist. So we have these separate tasks written out, and collectively these tasks will make up this entire workout screen, right? So a couple things to note here. In the software development world, this large encompassing screen or feature is known as an epic. And an epic is just that. It's a collection of smaller sub-features that build up a larger feature. Now, where am I getting this term epic and backlog, and as you see in here, sprint? Where are all these terms coming from? Well, these terms come from something known as SCRUM. And SCRUM is essentially a process used by companies to manage large-scale software products. Now, SCRUM is a pretty in-depth methodology that companies use to build software. And as someone who's learning how to code or building a side project, you don't fully have to understand Scrum and fully follow Scrum practices, especially for a small project, because that is totally overkill. However, we can use some Scrum undertones, such as breaking down epics into smaller features, to help us manage our project right. And this is important for our own tracking purposes. And in the case we ever bring a friend on or another developer to work on our project, it is just a great idea to have a project management tool and have a solid process in place for building out new features for your project. Now, not only can we use this methodology to help us manage our own project, if you're brand new to coding, like I said, this is pretty much how most companies nowadays build software. So if you apply these practices to your own side projects, you can sort of get that real world experience and possibly add, Scrum to your resume. You'll see that a lot in job descriptions and job postings. All right, so back to the epic and feature talk. With Monday, we can create an epic like this by going to the Epics tab in the navigation menu over here, and then add a new epic right here. So we would name this workout tracking, but I've already added an epic right here. So I'm going to forgo, or I guess I'll remove this right here. Right, so we have our workout tracking epic. And if you're working on a team or you just want to hold yourself accountable, a timeline should be associated to when you think the epic will be completed. And if you want to do that, you can go in the planned timeline section here and then set dates to when you want this epic to be completed. So I'll just make it, these dates. So now that my epic is created, I'll go back to my state of health board, as you see right here. And I'll associate this epic directly to my tickets. So I'll add the workout tracking epic to each one of these tickets here. All right, so we have our epic workout tracking, and usually you'll have multiple epics. So you'll want to figure out the major overarching features of your software and then create separate epics for those. For example, another epic I could create for this project would be the macro tracking epic that would encompass the features on this screen, but that's a little out of scope for this video, so we're going to hold off on that for now. Now, when it comes to managing coding projects and using Scrum, there are two key tools that you will often hear about, and that is the backlog board and then the sprint board up here. So you can think of the backlog board down here as your giant to-do list for the project, right? It's basically a collection of all the features, tasks, bugs, and ideas that need to be worked on eventually. It's sort of like a brain dump for everything that you want your project to do. And then there is this sprint board up here that we haven't really talked about. Now, in short, a sprint is a focused period of work, usually about 2 weeks long, where you and your team tackle specific tasks. It's kind of like saying, okay, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to focus on these specific things and get them done. And this is why epics are important, because usually epics will take months or sometimes even years, but you still want to ship code incrementally throughout the life cycle of your software. Now here's how the sprint board and the backlog work together. You start by looking at your backlog and then deciding what's the most important things you need to do, or sort of what you need to get done as soon as possible. You then pull those tasks directly into your sprint board and focus on those for the next 2 weeks. So for example, let's say, for the next 2 weeks, we want to focus on these 2 features. We can drag and drop them right into our sprint board like this. So this helps you stay organized and avoid getting overwhelmed by trying to do everything all at once. And also, by working in 2-week increments, you sort of give yourself time to reflect on if these features in the backlog down here are actually necessary. And what you'll find is a lot of features that you put in the backlog really aren't necessary at all, and you end up removing them. And this is essentially the essence of Scrum and even Agile programming, if you've ever heard of Agile. Agile and Scrum go hand in hand with each other. Okay, so sprints are typically 2-week blocks of focused work, and at the end of those 2 weeks, you aim to release what you've completed. Now, releases don't always mean pushing code out to the public, especially if you're building something from scratch. And in the cases where you're sort of getting something off the ground, it might take several sprints to get everything ready for an actual launch. I know when I was building the State of Health, it took me a few sprints to get everything done that I wanted on that initial release. And when planning a project, you'll usually map out a few sprints ahead. So for example, you can easily create a new sprint here in Monday by clicking this drop down next to new task and then selecting new sprint. So we could name this sprint 2. And this sprint could follow the sprint after sprint 1. So if we do sprint 1, I don't know, let's say the 29th through the 6th, this sprint could be, the 6th through the 20th. It's generally a good idea to plan a couple sprints in advance, but you really shouldn't overdo it. And that's because things will almost certainly change once you start building, and features might shift or evolve based on sort of what you learn along the way of building your product. Okay, so we've talked about the backlog down here, which is your list of everything that you need to work on, and then the sprint, which is your prioritized chunk of work for the next 2 weeks. Now let's dive into something else related to these tasks called story points. So for each ticket in your sprint, you'll notice a section called estimated SP right here, which essentially stands for estimated story points. In Scrum, story points are a way to measure how much effort a task will take you. And here's the thing. Story points are a totally arbitrary number, and you assign a value based on what you think the level of effort will be. So for example, let's say I have this ticket right here, which is, let's say, workout template functionality. If I think this feature might involve some tricky parts and take me a couple of days, I could call this, a 5-point ticket, right? 5 story points. But here's the thing, this is just my scale, and you might decide that the same ticket is a 2-pointer, or maybe even, a 13-pointer. The actual number doesn't really matter, and what's important is picking a scale that works for you or for your team and sort of sticking to this scale. That scale could be something like a 1-point ticket might mean something super quick, like fixing a typo or changing a background color, whereas a 5-point ticket might be a task with some sort of complexity that might take a couple of days, exactly like this workout template functionality ticket here. And once you and your team have defined what these values mean to you, you should keep using the same scale for all of your tickets. And that's because this consistency will help you figure out how much work you can realistically complete every sprint. And over time, you'll start to notice a pattern. And this pattern is called velocity, which is the amount of work you or your team typically finish in a sprint. When you're working on a solo side project, velocity and story points don't really matter that much. But if you want to get some experience with how Scrum works in a real world scenario, I think it's a great habit to put into practice. Not only that, It can help you stay organized and give you a better idea of how long your projects will take, and is absolutely necessary if you plan on working with other developers and deadlines are in place. Velocity is such a crucial tool or crucial metric when it comes to Scrum. All right, so aside from story points, the next thing we have here is the status of our ticket. So let's start this sprint with this button right here. And let's say the first ticket that I'm working on is create this weekly workout graph. All right, and we'll give this a 3-pointer. Let's say I'm ready to work on this ticket. Well, I would simply click the status and then move it to in progress to let others know that I'm working on this ticket. So if I'm working in a team, you want to associate the in progress status to your ticket, so someone else doesn't come to this board and then, snatch your ticket and try to work on it during the same time as you and essentially overlap what you're currently doing. So status is huge for when working in teams. All right, and then once it's done, you can simply move it to waiting to review or simply done. All right, so other than story points and status, another thing that I do when I'm managing my own project is make sure that each ticket that I create has a solid description. So I'll typically include screenshots of the UI design. So I would do something like, open up the Figma design, and this is add daily exercise to log. So, in this case, this would be this one right here. I take a screenshot of this, move it directly into my ticket, and then I would get pretty granular with it and do something like include what I would expect the user experience to be, steps for testing. So if we were working in an organization, we could include the steps for testing, for quality assurance or QA to sort of test the feature once we completed it. Include why this ticket was made in the first place, and essentially whatever will help me remember why I made this ticket in the first place and what needs to be done. Because as you could imagine, even though this ticket is in our current sprint, some tickets will sit in the backlog for months or even years, and you can totally forget why it was created in the first place, which is why it is crucial to have proper documentation when you initially create your tickets. All right, so aside from the description here, if we scroll down, you'll notice this thing called Git UI. And this is a super cool integration directly with Monday and really showcases how this tool is just phenomenal for working with teams and keeping others updated on the status of your work. And with Monday, we can directly integrate into our repository, and our tickets can essentially be connected to our feature branches. So to hook up our repository to our Monday board, when you are in a ticket, you'll see a button down here that will walk you through the setup, and it's extremely straightforward. It takes like 5 seconds to connect your project directly to your GitHub repository. And I've already done this. I've already connected my GitHub repository right here directly to the Monday board, as you will see in a moment. And this is where it gets really cool. So every time I want to work on a new ticket, let's say I'm the developer working on this add daily exercises to the workout log, I would scroll down here, I would copy this git command, open up my project, make sure I'm on the main branch of my project, or master in this case. Open up my terminal, paste this command to create my new branch. And now this branch is directly associated to this ticket that I have in Monday. And for the sake of demo purposes, let's, create a really simple commit. So I'll do something like, we'll change the H1 header text to, 25 pixels. We'll commit these changes. I'll push these changes to my repository, swap over to Monday, and check this out. Monday will keep track of the branch that is directly associated to this ticket. And through this UI, I can see the base branch, the number of commits, and even make the PR directly from monday.com. So if I click this make PR, it will include a link to the Monday ticket right here inside of the GitHub description. And then, of course, you could update the title in the description to whatever you want to further clarify your changes. And then it includes, this is just some setup code I added to make the graph not appear as blank. But if I make the pull request like this, and then go back to the Monday board, as you see, the pull request is now linked, and this pull request tab has a status of open. Right, so if I were another developer or a project manager, I could go through each ticket that a developer is working on and sort of just see the status of where the code is. And if the code is in review, I could urge other developers to review the code so we could eventually get it merged in. So again, just a super helpful feature to keep the tickets tightly coupled to the branches and pull request, which is usually what is done in a professional world and is just great for team collaboration. So the idea is you'll have all of your tickets for the sprint. Once you start developing your ticket, you'll move it to in progress. You'll associate a branch to that ticket like I did right here. You'll make the pull request. Once the pull request is reviewed by your team and merged into the main branch, you'll then mark that ticket as done, and then you will move on to the next ticket. And when all the tickets are done, you'll finally complete your sprint. And then you'll cut a new release. So when it comes to making a release, this will be different for every project, but for the state of health project right here, simply just need to increment the version number and then the build number. So going from, version 1.3.0 to 1.4.0, and then updating the build number. Where is it? Right here. Updating this to 12. I would then, in a real world scenario, commit this code and then start the process for cutting a new release build and uploading it to the Apple App Store. And then with your sprint being completed and your release being pushed out to the public, you would simply start a new sprint. So you would reprioritize your work. You would drag and drop what you're doing in the next sprint. So we'll move this one up here to sprint 2. And then we start the process all over again. So that is the overview of exactly how I manage my coding projects and how I originally built out the state of health. And again, high-level overview from start to finish. I'll break down the work that I need to do in the smallest, most manageable chunks. I'll add them to the backlog. I'll estimate the level of effort for each ticket in the backlog. I'll update the ticket to include a description of the type of work that needs to be done. One thing I didn't go over is once you add the description, you can move this to ready to start if you want. From there, I'll create a sprint and determine the most important tickets that I need to do from the backlog. And then again, once I've completed that sprint work, I'll complete the sprint and then I'll release it to the public. And it's this entire system that helps keep my large coding projects feeling much more manageable and allows me to actually hit the deadlines that I set for myself. I hope this video was helpful. A huge shout out to Monday.com for sponsoring this video. And if you're ready to take your project management and productivity to the next level, they're definitely worth taking a look at. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.